All right. Background about this e-workshop. Okay, so this e-workshop will be delivered by Miss Annabelle Ng, former national kayaker and SEA Games gold medalist, and current national developmental coach, squad coach, and she also coaches the under 15 squad. So basically, last year, she attended the International Canoe Federation Level 3 coaching course in Hungary. So basically, she has learned a lot about the Hungarian sporting culture during a stint there. So today, she's going to share what are the key components of that culture and how we can integrate those components into our local sporting culture to make it better, and what coaches such as yourself can do to help contribute to a better sporting culture in Singapore. So without further ado, let's welcome Annabelle to commence the sharing. Annabelle, please.
Okay. Hi, morning everybody. Wait, let me just take a look at the screen. Okay, so let me take over the screen first. Let me see. Sorry. Let me just see if I can get the screen. Okay, just give me a moment, yeah. Okay. Chanam, I can't really get your screen. Yeah.
Your co-host, right? You have a deck at your computer?
Yes. Wait,
Yeah.
I have a deck on my computer, so I'll just use my deck, okay?
Yeah, great, please. Thanks.
Can. Okay, can. Hi, morning everybody. So let me see if you can see my screen. Okay, I'll just share the screen over here. Share. Yeah. Are you all able to see this? If you can, just thumbs up, or just let me know if this is okay. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Henry. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Okay, so maybe just to start off, maybe we can just kind of have a idea of who is here in this group at this point in time. If you can you just write in the chat group, maybe let me know which sports you are from, so that I have an idea, who I'm actually talking to. Yeah. So, in usual like workshops, we can kind of have interaction, but over on Zoom, sometimes it seems a little bit one way. So it will be really helpful if I could, interact with you through the chat group itself. Yeah. So if you can just put your responses, like let me know what sports you're from. So I see archery, badminton, football, table tennis, mountain biking, swimming, touch football, taekwondo. Okay. Yeah, I also see some canoeing coaches here, like Kaiwan, Dennis, Cheryl as well. Yep. Hi, Dennis. Yeah. So canoe and much more. So from the Canoe Academy. Yeah. Hi, Kaiwan. Okay. So thanks for your responses, everybody. So maybe if I can just introduce myself. Um, I'm Annabelle. So I was from track and field in secondary school, and then I started canoeing in Serangoon Junior College, and the subsequently I became a national athlete. Yeah, and I represented in Singapore in 4 SEA Games and 2 Asian Games. I also became a PE teacher because I really enjoy sport and my sporting experience, and how sport made a difference in my life. That's how I decided that I wanted to work with youth. So that's how I ended up in teaching, and I actually went back to my old school, which is Serangoon Junior College, and yeah, and actually went on to teach for 10 years. Yeah. So in these 10 years that I was teaching, I was also representing the country. So I was juggling training as well as my working commitments. And my school was very supportive, and I really appreciated that. So there were times where I had to take no pay leave to go to train full time, and also to go for these games. And I was really thankful to my leaders, my principal, and my department for supporting me when I was doing that. Yeah. And so I went on after I stopped pedaling after the SEA Games in Singapore in 2015. I moved on more into coaching as well. And I was coaching the developmental and under 15 junior canoe sprint team for a short while. And now I'm actually one of the coaches under the Canoe Academy. Yeah, and I'm also working at CoachSG now. So if you know, Serangoon Junior College has merged with Anderson Junior College. So at that point in time, I decided to move on to a different role, and I decided to join CoachSG. So that's why I'm here. Yeah, so that's for me. If any questions, just feel free to add into the chat group, and I will try my best to answer you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So actually, this sharing is about the course that I attended. So I went for this level 3 expert coach course in canoe kayak sprint in Hungary last year. And I thought that, I mean, it would be great to share what I have learned from there. So to give you a little bit more information about this course, it was held in Budapest. And something that might be interesting for you to know is in Hungary, there are two main rivers. So there's Tisza River and there's Duna River. And that Duna River, Danuta River actually flows through Budapest, and it divides Buda on one side and Pest on the other. Yeah, so I didn't know that until, I mean, I was there training last time, and then I found that out. Yeah, and then of course, this course itself was a 3-week on-site course, and then after that, post course, we had a 3 months virtual learning, and we had many coaches from different countries that were there, from Africa, from New Zealand, and all. So it was to learn from the coach developers there as well as from each other. So it was really interesting because we get to interact and we see how the sport is different, but is developing differently in different countries as well. Yeah, and we could share best practices. Yeah, so we had different components of this, which I'll show you later. And it was a collaboration between International Canoe Federation with the University of PE in Hungary. So they provided the expertise in sports science, and the lecturers were there to share with us more about it. Yeah, so yeah, this is more about the course. As for why Hungary was the sorry. So as for Hungary, why Hungary? Hungary is one of the most successful and top performing countries in canoe sprint. In case you're not from this sport, so maybe I just let you know, it's very established in this sport. They have a total of 25 Olympic gold medals and 204 World Championship titles. So it has a long history and tradition in canoe sprint, and it's one of the most successful sports in Hungary in the last 30 years. Yeah, so it's currently one of the leading federations in canoe sprint. So Europe is a strong powerhouse in this sport, with, of course, athletes from other countries also coming up, such as Australia and yeah, Australia, and in Asia, one of the stronger ones would be like Japan and China. Yeah, so this is just a little bit more information about that. And this is a outline of what the course was like. So basically, it was a lot about the sports science part that is more sport specific, but it was also general. So we also talk about things like physiology and pedagogy. And then we have a big part about technical elements where we had practical club visits. We went to watch selection races. We went to watch their national marathon champs. Then we had interviews with club owners there. We could visit the clubs as well and look at the kids train. We had practical gym sessions. And we also went for this marketplace sport fair. So I think to reduce my talking and to share a bit more, we actually did up a video to show you what it was like. And I hope that will be more interesting for you as well. So if I can. Okay, so yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that video. So basically that video was something that showed what we did over there, and you get to see how we interacted with um, the people at the clubs, and then we also interacted with the athletes, and we also went to visit we went to see the selection race and all. So that was what we did. It was really quite interesting because it was quite immersive, yeah, the whole experience. So yeah, so and for best practices wise, I think over there was a lot of gleanings for me personally, and I thought I'll just share some of them over here. I hope I'm a bit louder now, because I think somebody mentioned that I was a bit soft. I don't know whether y'all can hear me now. Yeah, so if it's still, is it better? Maybe I should. Yeah, okay. I saw your question, Sandy, about how kids take ownership of their equipment, right? Yeah, so maybe later I will touch on that. Yeah, if you can just give me a moment. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so just to share a little bit more. So maybe to start off, the interesting thing about there is that the kids there in each club, so that then there's a club culture, and each club they actually get to do many different sports. So when I say that, I mean when we were there, we saw kids doing soccer. Like during their summer camps, they have like summer breaks, summer camps, and they were doing soccer. They were playing rugby. They were running even when we were there. Not even outside of say summer camp, during training itself, they will do a variety of activities. So they play ball, they ran, they also do swimming within their training programs. And of course, if you know that over there they have seasonal changes. So in their winter, they besides running and swimming, they also do things like cross country skiing. They also do ice hockey, for example. So they allow their kids within the club to do a variety of sports. And I think one thing that happens, I mean, one thing that's good about that is it maintains the child's interest across different sports, and they also get to train the child's knowledge of their own physiological, like their bodies, by doing different sports. And they also have, I mean, through all these sports, they also build their cardiovascular system. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, because in Singapore, because maybe also because we don't have this kind of seasonal changes, but to not many coaches actually, not many of us actually incorporate this many different cross training methods. Yeah, so that was interesting. Uh, and over there, they have a very established inclusive club system. So if you look at the example, one of the clubs that we visited, you can see participants of many different kinds. So you have kids, many kids from different ages. Then you also have uh, para athletes that are there, and equipment that is modified to suit them. And you also have, in fact, national athletes who still train with the clubs, for example. And even athletes that are that thing, when one of the clubs they went to, we saw athletes that are 60, 70 years old taking their boats down to paddle. So you really see a wide range of age group going down to the clubs to paddle. Yeah, so very inclusive. And then they also have fundraisers throughout the year and a lot of competition. So I'm not sure for all the other sports whether it's the same, but for Singapore, for kids especially, sometimes it revolves around national schools, for example. And sometimes beyond the national school season, or in canoeing, at least sometimes it starts in January and it ends by April, and kids stop to study or prepare for their exams. Whereas over there, throughout the year, they have regular races, and races in different categories, races where there's a mix of gender, fun races where family can take part together. And their competitions are very interesting because it's really like a community event where parents, it's like a whole family brings their boats down, they have picnic mats, and then they will sit there, they will interact with other families, and kids will go down and race, and they'll come back, they have a lot of fun. They have booths there for parents and for participants to go and play some games and eat some food and things like that. So that's very family oriented community event. Yeah, so it's a community sport, entry any level. And as mentioned just now, the national athletes have a blend of decentralized and centralized training. So nearing their competitions, they gather together to train. But beyond that, some of the athletes actually train with their club. So the good thing about that is that the young kids get to see the national athletes at doing what they do. So see them training at a high level, look at good technique, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So yes, and then over there they also have the proper scaffolding for young kids, because they use, if you know, I don't know how many of you have tried paddling actually, or tried kayaking in the sprint kayak. The sprint kayak and the sprint canoe is actually very narrow, and it's a little bit like the balance beam of water sports. So the challenge very often is about trying to stay in the boat at the start. So many athletes who first pick up sprint canoeing or sprint kayak would the challenge is to stay in the boat. I would say if you can stay in the boat for more than 15-20 seconds without falling in, it's quite a big achievement already. Yeah, so to get to that kind of into that sprint boat, most of the time we need to introduce certain modified equipment to get them to be able to get you to train their stability. Yeah, so over there there's all sorts of equipment to allow that, and that's really helpful for the kids. And even pedals wise, there's smaller pedals, different shapes, and as you can see over here, to cope with their seasonal training times when they have winter, or to train their technique in a different way, they have indoor pool where kids can train as well. So I think one thing that's also very crucial is over there they make sports fun. So they make canoeing very fun for the kids. You can see when I was there, you could see all the kids laughing. There was a lot of interaction. And from what I understand from the kids I interacted with, they enjoy going there. So after school, the next thing they know is, oh yay, let's go to the club, and then they'll spend their time there. Yeah. So and I think the other thing that's was good was it's the governance. So the Hungarian Canoe Federation over there, it's constantly finding new methods to engage the population, the participants, and how finding ways to promote the development of the sport. So for example, they will encourage people to set up clubs, provide funding, provide a place, and then also ensuring that the sport is well covered on media and all. Yeah, and I think another thing that's interesting is also the recognition of coaches' contribution to the high performance system. So they have a system to recognize coaches. So if let's say a coach athlete does well at Olympic level and gets a gold medal, they don't just recognize the club of the athlete or the coach of the immediate coach of the athlete. They go right down back to the first coach of the athlete. So which club did the athlete start from? Who was the first coach? Who are the coaches in the athlete's life? They acknowledge that, and they publicize that, and they find ways and means to recognize them. Yeah, and then also if there are clubs that have budding talent and all, they will government will channel funding into those clubs, and to help those clubs develop these young athletes as well. Yeah, so this is some of the best practices that I've learned. So my key takeaways from this trip is mainly these four things, which I'll elaborate a bit more as I move on. And I think these are the key things. So I think one of the things that came up very strongly is the importance of a strong sporting culture. So what their success in canoe sport is not just about canoe sport. Actually, it's actually the whole sporting culture in Hungary. So if you remember the slide I showed you previously about the Olympic medals, they do well in, actually, if I can just show you again, they do well in Hungary. They don't only do well in canoeing. Oh, yeah. Okay, I don't know whether I can find it. So okay, maybe it's not there, but it's okay. Maybe I'll just let you know. So they do well not just in canoeing, but they're also good in fencing, swimming, water polo. Oh yeah, this is the slide. I'm sorry. Yeah, so if you can see, they did really well in fencing, swimming, canoeing, wrestling, gymnastics as well. So they actually have a lot of medalists at the Olympic level. But more than just what is happening at the high performance level, it's actually the base. So the population, the kids, the youth over there are engaged in many different sports, and the sporting culture over there is very strong. Yeah, so I can see that the lifelong participation there it's really good because you really see athletes that are like between like 40 to 70 still pedaling, still running, and still being engaged in sport through the club system that they have. Yeah. So besides that, as mentioned, they have a lot of community events. There's the inclusiveness. There's a established multi-club system, and there's a lot of extensive media coverage. So I think this is the other thing that's a little bit different from Singapore. So over there, I think they have more than 5 or 6 sporting channels, and I'm not talking about just the usual sporting channels that we have on cable TV. Their media coverage focuses on their local athletes, the national team, the achievements, even their national canoeing championships, their swimming championships, and all. They will show it. And even when people clock, say, PBs or personal best timings, they will publicize it on not just TV, but also in their print media. So they have a newspaper that talks about their sports daily. And they also have a lot of coverage on social media that really help conjures the national identity and pride. Yeah. So using this media, they actually help to promote this sporting culture as well. So that's something that came out very strongly when I was there, and also the emphasis on a healthy sporting lifestyle. Yeah. So this is the other thing that I wanted to share. So about how over there they really optimize their talent pool. So of course at the base they started out with a lot of sport sampling and multi-sport development. Like kids over there do a wide range of activities and sports, and from a young age they do that already. And then because they start so many sports when they were young, many of the paddlers that I know from Hungary, for example, even if they leave canoeing, high performance canoeing, they eventually also go to other sports. So we have people who go into CrossFit. I've known an athlete that went into triathlon. We have athletes that basically move into different sports because of the transferability. Yeah, and I think that's something that they could do well because of that wide base and that multi-sport culture that they have. Yeah, and that's one thing that's very interesting. The other one I think is the importance of a strong governance. So I think this is something that came up very strongly as well. So the Hungarian Canoe Federation is a very stable organization, and has been doing a lot of very good work in promoting the sport, not only in Hungary but in the global scene as well. So they have been taking the lead in organizing a lot of international competitions, trying new things about coverage to make it spectator friendly, and spearheading a lot of these initiatives. They also have a very effective talent management system within the sport and within the federation. So they were able to identify talents from a young age in different clubs, and then provide the funding to help these clubs continue to grow their program. And then, of course, they have a mature youth training system with a huge base and interest in the sport. They have an established coaching system with progression, so and recognition and incentive. So at different levels, coaches are recognized. So you can be a very, very good community coach, and they can recognize you as a master coach, or yeah. So really sharing these best practices with other coaches as well, and giving platforms for these coaches to share and help grow their coaching system. Yeah. And then in terms of their competition system, like I mentioned, it's all year round, and it really revolves around they kind of sync their competition system with the high performance system. So if the high performance system has a few key selection races, they kind of adjust the competition season so that it falls nicely in place with that. And during the selection races as well, you can have other races to at different age groups to let athletes take part as well. Yeah. And then there's of course a very sustainable club system, and a willingness to adapt and adopt new strategies to keep the sport interesting. So one thing that was interesting when they came over to Singapore to share was about how the sport is evolving, and how a lot of sports have to appeal to audiences or spectators to keep the interest in sport. So For canoeing, it's a little bit like like running. If for those of you who don't know, it's for the sprint races, it's like a start line and end line. The fastest finisher wins. So the longer races is like a marathon. Same thing, start and finish. But we can do things like wash riding and certain tactics. So to make it interesting, we kind of need to make sure we have a lot of good filming, good video emphasis, the giving a good history and like sharing about these athletes, and we sometimes have to venture beyond just sprint canoe. So so for HCF, they were looking into things like stand-up paddling, about how it's growing in popularity, and they were trying to promote that sport as well for the participation of the community. So it's really not just about the high performance. They were thinking about the base and getting people interested in paddle sports, and that's why they start to focus on stand-up paddling as well. So the HCF really sets the direction, and the personnel that are inside the HCF, they are all ex-athletes or people who are involved in the sport, so they know and they enjoy the sport. They are driven, they take initiative, they organize a lot of programs, and they have the right people in place, and that helps ensure the sustainability. So I think one thing that I didn't share also, I think they in within the sporting system itself for high performance athletes, they don't only groom them when they're young as talents, but even as high performance athletes, they also work with them to ensure that beyond their sporting career, they are able to able to continue in terms of like what kind of future jobs or job prospects they can have. Yeah, so that's for them, and some of them are channeled back into sport so that they can contribute back to sport because of their knowledge and their expertise. Yeah, so that's for them, and I think this is really good. And I think that's very interesting is about how they make sport enjoyable. So I I I see that when I was there, it was really a lot of emphasis. The emphasis is different at different levels. So it's not just about high performance sport and the sport science and the things that help them to to get better with the trainings, like getting faster and all. It was also about at the base, in the youth, how they make sport enjoyable, how they ensure it's fun and challenging at the same time. So it's fun not just about reducing the competition, letting them just play for fun and just exercise, but fun in terms of giving them the right amount of challenge. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about this, and this is something that was shared during the course about like zone of proximal development. So I think very often this is the challenge that community coaches face sometimes, or even coaches at a high level face. So to find the correct amount of stimulation or engagement for the athletes to engage them appropriately to to continue to find that challenge and the enjoyment in sport. Yeah, so if I can just share with you this chart. So something very simple is basically the level of competence versus the level of challenge. As the challenge goes higher, if the level of competence is low, if they're not able to achieve those very high challenges, challenging exercises, then after a while they will lose interest. Yeah, or they'll get bored because of high anxiety, and then, oh, I cannot do it, I keep falling into the water, so it's not fun. So how coaches overcome that is they provide modified equipment with wider base, team boats that make it more stable, smaller pedals that is not curved, that's flat, that's easier to handle, and then also beyond just that, they provide. So example, one of the things that we do, for example, a 20k pedaling 20 kilometers. I think if you just tell athlete to do 20 kilometers, not many athletes will say, yay, 20 kilometers. It's challenging because it's painful. But I think how the club system or how they do it is, of course, there's a gradual progression towards that. It's set as a target, like, oh, we're going to do this, or sometimes they don't even tell you. So they divide the 20k into little bits of, say, 4k or 5k, and you have games within that 20k. So you do things like wash riding, you have little mini competitions, you have time sets, and then before you know it, at the end of the training, oh, you already finished 20k. Yeah, and sometimes they do things like camping, so you go around an island and you come back, and kids don't know that it's 20k, but the coaches know that it's 20k. They go around, they go to the island, they have a picnic, they have some games, and then they pedal back. So they made it really fun, so it doesn't seem like it's just practice, it's like play for them. And I think for kids especially, that's really important. In fact, if you move on to the high performance level, very often it becomes a lot of emphasis on practice rather than play. But uh, I guess the play takes in a different form, more of like a competition, being able to overcome themselves, uh, and being able to accomplish certain tasks, and then surpassing themselves. And also the competition when they race with other friends, to them sometimes it's play, it's fun. To us it's fun. So the key thing is about how we can provide the training, the right amount of stimulation to be within this zone of proximal development, where the learner finds it just nice, just enough challenge and enough competence, or supported well enough to be able to achieve what they want to achieve. And this is not just in the physical aspect, it could be cognitive, psychological, it could be social, emotional as well. So you must remember, a lot of youth, or even for adults, the social aspect is really important. So providing platforms where people can interact and have fun together is also important in terms of planning the training. Yeah. So uh, if we go down, if the level of competence is high and the task is not challenging enough, then the learner can complete it without assistance. Then very often they'll get bored after a while. So it's very important that within a big group, we need to find what is appropriate. And that's difficult because you need to understand your athletes well, and not everybody within the same age group progress at the same rate, for example. And I'm sure all coaches know that. So it's important to know what they need at each point in time, and then kind of provide that differentiation. So for in Hungary, for example, in some clubs where you have maybe under 14 athletes that are outperforming their age group, they are way beyond under 14 performance level, and they are given the they are allowed to take part in a slightly higher age group race, so they can challenge themselves a little bit further, for example. Yeah. And that's one of the ways they kind of differentiate the trainings or the competition and the engagement they give to the athletes. So this is another video that I wanted to show you all. It's about one of the sport marketplace that I went to and I visited. And it's really interesting because you see how it's not just in canoe kayak that's like this, it's across all sports. They have this very active club system or promoting of sports. So that was a video of one of the sport fairs that we attended, and it was really interesting because, as you can see, there were so many different sports. All the clubs were there, the kids were there having fun. Schools were bringing their kids down to take part in the sport, and then it was really interesting actually to see this happening. So a marketplace like this, they call it marketplace, happens about twice a year. It's really big for over a few days, and then kids get to go there and try different sports, sign up with the clubs and all. But just looking at it, you can see how kids are so involved in sport over there, and usually not just one sport, they do a few. Yeah, and it could be just through one club or multiple clubs. Yeah, so I think next thing I just wanted to ask and to have some a little bit of interaction. Yeah, they injected a lot of fun. Yes, Anthony. Yeah, so I think the question is, what in your opinion actually affects sporting culture? Because I guess we all know it's a little bit different from what we have in Singapore, and of course for different reasons. But maybe if you can just share with me as coaches, what in your opinion affects sporting culture, and then we can have a little bit of discussion, because I think that it's just me talking so far. But yeah, I think this will be great if you can just put in the chat group perhaps and let me know what you think affects sporting culture, or at least in a country or even in your sport. Yeah, so I'll just give you a little bit of time to kind of just key your thoughts into the chat group. Yeah, so Sandy, thanks. You said opportunity to sample different sports, time and money. Yes, definitely. So that's one key thing. So amount of resources, time as well. So personally, I felt that like during the COVID situation, when there was a lot more work from home, I have a park downstairs. It became a lot more crowded, and a lot more people running, for example. So it could be because the availability of time, and then more families are able to bring their kids down to exercise a bit more. Yeah, so that kind of work-life harmony is important. Caleb, yes, you say you feel in Singapore would be good governance, structure, which we lack. Yeah, so I guess the governance can be at a few levels, right? It could be at the country's level, a more macro kind of perspective. Then of course there's a micro perspective, which is the sport itself. Yeah, so and I mean, if you go down even more micro, then that will be us as coaches within our own team, within our own within our own sport, within our own team, how in that sense we help to promote this kind of culture. Yeah, and we yeah, I mean, I agree that the governance is really important. I guess it's a bit of a chicken and egg to get the right people in the right place. Is also not easy because Singapore is relatively young. So in a sense, we don't have that history of, we don't have that many people that we can choose from, or get people to go into the sport ecosystem or return to the sport ecosystem. So that, I guess, is also quite challenging. Yeah, and I think Taiwan was saying government and agency policies. Yes, definitely. Yeah, as mentioned, it's not easy to shape those, but I mean, we also have different emphasis. I guess in Singapore, we are focusing a lot on, say, through the MOE system. So in terms of the CCAs and in school. So kids do stay back to do sports, but they do sports in school rather than in a club system. There's, of course, pros and cons in that aspect, but as agencies, of course, we have to work closely together to ensure that, we still help create that sporting culture that we want. And I guess that's one of the key challenges, because in MOE we also, I mean, MOE has certain policies that have to adhere to as well, especially in this COVID situation. I think we are all more aware now how it affects us, and I guess we cannot, there's only a limit there's a limit to how much we can influence that, but we can definitely make a difference within where we are. Yeah, so in Singapore, somebody, okay, I don't have the name, but it said the only club to organize this type of activities is CoachSG. Who else can provide facilities and place? Agreed. So I guess, I mean, some of us coach in privately, will be coaching in condos and all. In terms of facilities wise, yes, CoachSG does provide the facilities. And I guess, I mean, because of COVID situation, it's kind of clamped down a little bit on the regulations because of the number of people and all. But you can see the effort that CoachSG has been putting in to get coaches back in action, and to get participants back in action to participate in activities. And I think that's an ongoing effort. And I think within CoachSG, I know that there's been a lot of plans to try to develop even more facilities and infrastructure to promote this sporting culture. So I think it's a work in progress, but definitely something that we are working on. And then, yeah. So Desmond said priority between study and sport, definitely. So I guess it's something about, there's a lot of emphasis on the academics, and getting them to understand, getting kids or youth to understand that there's the importance of juggling both actually. Yeah. So that can bring down, we can bring down our focus onto important things like character building. So the importance of time management, discipline, and things like that. So I see it more as an opportunity to share certain values and to help them, see the importance of managing their time well. Yeah. Socioeconomic status. Yeah, definitely. So thank you for your responses, everybody. It's really helpful because then I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. So yes. So I think maybe just a slight overview. I guess these are some other things that also play a part in a sporting culture. So for history wise, just to share with you, like Hungary has a long history, of course, a lot longer than Singapore. They have a history of sporting excellence. So they have quite a lot of success in the sporting scene. And more than that, if you know, like their history in terms of their Soviet background, their communist background, and how there's a lot of national pride instilled within the population. Yeah. And how they have very strong beliefs and all about uh, certain that like about like representing the country, about the hardships that they went through. If you know, like just to share with you, like the national anthem, for example, talks about the grievances that they had, or their war past, or the war strife that they had in the past, and how the people emerge stronger from it. So it's I think even simple things like that can shape, the history and all the anthem can shape that kind of identity that the people have. And on top of that, the government harnesses that and intervenes by channeling resources towards this aspect. So it's not just sport actually. In terms of art and music, even science and technology, Hungary is known to be one of the best in these areas. And they emphasize a lot about sport and music because of the value they see in it, in bringing up the national identity as well as the culture. Yeah. So the environment as well. Hungary is a landlocked area. They only have like two main rivers, but still they are not confined by the environment, but they have two main rivers which help promote some of their water sports as well. Then the community, the people, the support there is, the existing sporting success, which in turn becomes role models for the population. And you have role models is one thing, but harnessing that role models to 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 kind of back to the community and to bring out certain values and to emphasize on it, to bring out, to conjure that kind of identity and culture is pretty important. Yeah. So that's something that they do very well. And they have a lot of effective pathways and plans. So in terms of their systems and structures to further develop it. Yeah. So, but the question is who affects sporting culture, right? And how can we contribute to a positive sporting culture? So I see some questions there. I will answer those later. Maybe I just finish this first, and then after we can move on to that. Yeah. So how can we contribute to a positive sporting culture in Singapore? So as mentioned just now, there are a lot of things that we hope to change, but we can't change everything. I think your feedback, of course, is the most important whenever we can give that. And more than that, right where we are, I think there are things that we can do to help shape this culture as well. Because at the end of the day, the experience that a youth has or an athlete has, the most immediate form of experience that they will get is actually from us coaches. So we are the ones that craft the experience for them. And if it's a positive experience, that will definitely help them in terms of their what they take home or their takeaway from sport. So these are just some ways of what I think we can do to contribute to a sporting to a positive sporting culture. So keeping sports fun and engaging at all levels. So rather than making the emphasis to be on competition, but to focus on challenging and engaging athletes. So it's not so much we want to do a competition, but more it could for different athletes can be different. Sometimes it could be outdoing themselves. Sometimes it could be gaining competence in a certain skill. sometimes it could be social, so it could be the interaction that they have. So providing platforms that they can engage with other athletes as well. So that's important for us to know athletes and then to be involved. So to be the change we want to see. So I think very often, sometimes I ask myself, like, when we're very critical, I can be quite critical at sometimes. So it's about challenging myself to say, why don't you be the change that you want to see? So that's one reason why I ended up in in CoachSG, because I wanted to contribute more into the coaching scene. And I think very often, we might say for NSAs, for example, we judge them very critically, and sometimes it's difficult for them because they might not understand what's happening at the different levels. And my challenge then is to say, why not we be involved? Let's help in the events that they have, the competitions, or to give feedback, or to be involved in the subcommittees that they have, so that we can help shape the sport, our sport, and also indirectly sport in general. Yeah. So I think the other thing, of course, we can do is lead by example and model the way. So not just as coaches, but also as parents. Some of us here are educators, even for athletes as well. So to lead by example and model the way, and this can help the youth that are, coming up from this system, that they see that parents are enjoying sport, they see that that we are active and they're enjoying ourselves. We love doing this, and they can it can rub off them as well. Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is control the controllable. So there are things that we cannot control. Rather than focus on those negative things, it would be great to focus on the things that we can change right where we are. Yeah. And of course, the best thing we can do is, of course, to collaborate and share best practices. So I think very often coaches, or at least when I was coaching, because I'm so busy, right, it ends up being just me, and then it's difficult to in a sense interact with other coaches. So I think the best is the best way we can grow is to share with each other, like in this platform where we can interact and hear from other sports, for example. Then better beats perfect, because we can keep improving. Yeah. So I think the other thing that is important is to encourage honest two-way conversations, to not just provide feedback but dare to receive feedback. So I think very often, at least when I was a coach, I would say most coaches, many of us come up from athlete background. So sometimes we might be we have certain ideas or things that we acknowledge as good or has worked for us, and we like to just stick to that. But sometimes, as things evolve over time, there are new technology, innovation, there's new practices that work, for example. So I think as coaches, if we can continue to improve ourselves and dare to receive feedback, it reflects what our it's a good role modeling for athletes as well, because then they also see that they should be listening, and they should be taking in the feedback as well. Yeah. So stay humble, that's important, and be positive, and of course think about the bigger value proposition of sport beyond just the medals. And I think and that's very important, because then you will understand that it's not just a high performance coach that's very important. The coach at a community level is also very important. The educators in school is also very important, because if you can focus on the values and the character education and what sport can bring out, then it helps to contribute to this sporting culture. These kids, as they grow up, they have this ingrained within them, and they are the ones that will go back to contribute to sport. Yeah. And inclusiveness is something that I think is also very important. The focus or the emphasis of being inclusive is important, because then it can engage the entire Singapore population. Yeah. So these are the things that I would like to share with you. And I think there are some questions that I should be addressing. Just now I saw a few already. So maybe I will just answer one of it, that I guess somebody was asking about equipment. How do we get kids to look after their equipment, or how did Hungary do that? So yeah, as you can see just now in the video, the kids, most of them handle their own equipment, meaning they carry their own boat, they wipe down their boat, they make sure that the boat and everything is equipped properly. And I think how to do that, it's really a big part of it is about putting that process in place, and put that process in place, or that habit in place, is actually the coaches that do it. So I struggle a lot. I think the coaches over here will understand. So in canoeing, we always end up, I always say in my shed, there's a screw eater. Like, in a boat, there are a lot of screws, and somehow these screws are always disappearing, and a nano screw costs $4 each. So in a boat has about 1, 2, 4, you have about at least 10 screws in the boat, and very often we spend a lot of money just trying to buy those screws to fix into the boat. So I guess at the start it's about deliberately setting time aside to tell them about this and making them do it. So do it on the spot. We take time to do it. You clean your boat when you come up, take 5 minutes to clean the boat, turn it over. And then I guess after you have practiced it for about 2-3 weeks over a period of time, it becomes part and parcel of the routine. And of course, the sport leaders, meaning the de facto leaders or the CCA leaders or the captains in the team, can help to oversee that, for example. But I think we want them to be self-driven to be able to do that. At the start, we need to allocate time to it until it becomes a habit. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. And I think there are a few more questions over there, but I cannot really see it. So maybe I should give the time back to Chuan Yong, and then, or we can open up this time and you can share with me what are some questions that you have that I can, help address based on my experience in Hungary. Yeah, so I'll stop share, and Chuan Yong, you can take over, and I can see.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Belle. So I've collated about 3 questions from my end. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe just ask them one by one. Okay. First one is how do we know how much fun to infuse into the training?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. So I guess really, I think coaching is really an art. Okay, it's a science and an art. And the skillfulness of our skillfulness as coaches really lies in this. So to know what our athletes need at which point in time, and then what to give them. So I would say there's no like a formula, because every athlete is different. In fact, and different at different times. So sometimes athletes nearing their exam period are very tired. What they need might be different from what we have planned, for example. So I think that constant communication is important. So that communication to know, what the athlete need at that point in time. So let's say, for example, during the exam period, athletes are very stressed, and they are still training, but they might not have that amount of attention that they can devote into the training, or very hard training, for example. They're very tired, they haven't been sleeping enough. So I think as coaches, what some things that we can do is to once is communicate directly face to face. The other thing that we did in the national team last time is we had training logs where we can write down our reflection of the training session. We can also tell coaches that last week I was very tired based on this. We could also put down our heart rate. So we had a resting heart rate. So a resting heart rate column where we put down when we first wake up, when we take our heart rate, what it was like. So it's a sign of whether the athletes or at high performance level, whether they're overtraining. Yeah. So I think if we have an open, positive climate, then athletes will come to you. Actually, they will just come to you and say, "Oh, coach, this week I'm not feeling so well. Is there anything else I can do in place of today's training, for example?" So I think the most immediate, easiest way to infuse fun, or at least the right engagement level, is to have good, positive communication. Then in terms of activities wise, I guess we as coaches, we need to have a big toolbox of it. So we have a big toolkit so that we know what do athletes enjoy. So for some athletes, actually not all of them enjoy the social interaction through a ball game, for example, because some of them might not be able to catch ball very well. Some might enjoy doing physical training or physical conditioning a little bit more, for example. They enjoy being able to do pull-ups and be able to challenge themselves by doing more of that, for example. So I think our knowledge as coaches of our athletes are very important. And then of course we don't want to overemphasize on just what they want, but also develop them in the other areas that they should be developed a little bit more in, or that can help them in. So it's a little bit of playing around with what we think is suitable, and then also preparing them in advance. So having a plan and sharing with them in advance, I think it helps athletes to know that, during holiday period, there's a training camp coming up, or there's a more intensive training coming up, and there will be more because there's no school, there's more time, we can play more interactive activities, and also to kind of phase out our planning and let the athletes know about that so they are prepared for it. Yeah, so I think these are some ideas how we can kind of infuse fun into the plan itself. Yeah, so I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Belle. So the next 2 questions will be about sport sampling, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, the first one is, would sport sampling give rise to a lack of loyalty and seriousness in participation?
Okay. So,
Yeah.
interesting question actually. So, I think this is of course a question that all of us are asking, but I guess the thing is about what we mean by loyalty, right? So, I guess if you look at this as a big ecosystem, so we are not just team canoeing. We are not just a sport of canoeing, not just a sport of swimming. If you think of this as a country, as the big macro system, then you are building up athletes and sports people for the country. And I think that in itself should be how we are looking at it, because uh, of the value proposition of sport. I think the other thing you need to do, we also need to consider, it's not just about this, it's also about the individual. So how often or how long can you do a sport for? So for example, if I'm doing, say, competitive football, or yeah, like a team sport, and say, once you go beyond that high performance level, when you are like when you are and working adult, for example, it might not be as accessible or easy for you to be able to find a team of 11 or like many people to play with you in team sports, for example. And very often the competence is quite important. So if you cannot play, let's say if you cannot rally badminton, or you cannot uh, play a game of badminton or tennis well, and it's very unlikely that individual will go into that sport in or play that sport for leisure when they grow older, which is why at the base it's important to expose the kids to different sports and help them to not only gain fundamental movement skills that are important for them, and help them to be good, which will also help the sport that they are doing, eventually the main sport, but also um, allow them to enjoy sport for life and a variety of sports. So I think we have to kind of take take a more macro stand and take a step back and understand that it's not just about the sport itself. But that said, in the Hungarian Canoe Federation, or the clubs in Hungary, what they did is that instead of venturing, so they have two ways of doing it. One is, if I'm, say, a major club, Honvéd, for example. So I within that club, I'm a multi-sport club. So I have football, I have canoeing, I have badminton, I have quite a few sports, swimming, and then kids that come to Honvéd can do canoeing, and then after that perhaps they might not want to do canoeing anymore, they might move on to do a bit of swimming and all. That's one way. The other way is within the sport itself, we introduce different sports, so kids get to try all these different sports within the club itself. Yeah, so in terms of loyalty, it's really about the question of where you want to place the emphasis on. And there are many cases where I think in terms of sport is about not burning out too early, and getting kids to enjoy sport. So it's if let's say they move from, okay, so I have examples of Charmaine, who was in canoeing in Singapore and eventually went into pentathlon and got a medal for Singapore in pentathlon, for example. And does that reduce the value of sport? And as coaches, do we then say, oh, you're not loyal because you went to a different sport? So I think as coaches, we are really educators within sport, and we have the ability to promote this national identity and pride. And all the more as coaches, we should work together to create this kind of positive environment. Because if we become very in a sense possessive of our athletes, then it promotes this kind of culture within the bigger picture as well. So if I can just make a call out, then it will be for all of us to work together to promote this sports sampling to athletes. Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah,
thanks, Mel, for the long and comprehensive answer. So the
thank you.
second question on sport sampling will be, okay, how long should athletes sample each sport before deciding which sport to enroll in
Okay, so
or to
that's
specialize in? Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting, but I would say I don't have a hard and fast uh, answer for that. And I think it also depends on the athlete themselves, right? The youth themselves. So about, when how much their feedback, and whether they enjoy the sport and all. I guess enough for a child to understand the sport, and then based on their feedback whether it's time to move on to something different. But I also want to say that for sports wise there are also categories, right? So we have racket sports, net barrier games versus territorial games versus say like sports that are more focused on cardio endurance, for example. So I guess we also need to look at it in terms of big group sports. So perhaps we can let the child try racket games, a variety of racket games, or one racket game, and then let them try beyond a season. I would say a season would be important because the child will want to see how they have progressed. So it can't be too short and the child has not achieved competence in a certain scale. They want to be able to see, want them to be able to see, how hard work can show improvements and things like that. So I guess it's really about what we want to emphasize and allowing the time for it so that the child can develop within that sport first and then allow them to try other sports to develop other skills as well. Yeah, so I hope I answer your question and that's not too long. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Belle. So,
Okay.
coaches, we have now moved to the reflection this segment of